I'm not sure if folks can hear me or not, but I see a couple of viewers that through your Google account should be able to join this conversation live. I am waiting for Ken to come on board. I've placed a couple of chats. I hope that you get the chat messages, but I'm not sure about that. I have sent invites to Glenn and Dustin, so you should be able to join this. Well, I'm not sure what's quite happening with everything, but what I want to do here is just proceed with an overview of version 4 of Avogadro. And so I've been chatting with Ken here for a couple of years regards to Avogadro. Wisconsin developed this Avogadro system in about 2000, I think 2001. So we've gone through several versions, and now we're on version 4. And I wouldn't quite call it beta. It's certainly beyond that. But it is a new version for us, and but we're really excited about it. So as long as people are online, I see a few viewers. I'm going to walk through the system. This is going to be recorded. I wish we had some interaction here, but I just don't see that. I've sent some text messages, and I haven't quite seen Ken online. So this is something that I will record, and then we can go from there. So what I'm going to do first is to, as I'm learning this, get Google Hangout so I can record this, I'm going to share my screen and show you some of the capabilities of software, and then I'm going to walk through some of the details as far as tournament setup. So I'm clicking on share screen. And I think I clicked the wrong one. I've got 2 monitors. So I'm going to share this one. There we go. Okay, so what we have as far as Avogadro goes is that it's certainly a scoring program for Science Olympiad, specifically built for Science Olympiad. It also has scheduling capability and then presentation capability. And it's really that scheduling and presentation capability that really adds some of the great power to Avogadro. Along the line, there's a lot of opportunity for us to collect data related to, in particular, student engagement with the events, and certainly then teams, coaches. So I'm going to first bring you to the main page of Avogadro, and we've made some things that are very simple for now. You'll see some new design things that'll come out, but we wanted to go with a very simple package, and one of the new features is that it is rather mobile friendly, although there are some challenges across platforms, but it is a mobile friendly and responsive system. I am going to go to my account, and when you log into Avogadro, you would come to an account that would look like this. And one of the new features with Avogadro 4 is that as an account holder, the participating tournaments that you're assigned to are listed here. And then that's pretty common for perhaps tournament managers and or coaches to be associated with a variety of tournaments. So those are listed here. What I'm going to go to is one of our test sites. That is the Wisconsin State Division C tournament that was done. Really, it's data from last year, and then we've uploaded that into this, and gives us a feel of an overall tournament. But then we also can play around with this a little bit. So let me just walk through some of the main aspects as far as things like scoring, scheduling, and presentation of this. Let's just begin with things like scheduling. So all of the events certainly can be self-scheduled, and I'll show you some of the details of that. But I want you to see what it feels like from a coach's perspective. So these were events that this Boyceville team has an opportunity to schedule for. Anatomy physiology would have been chosen as a self-schedule event. So this coach can see which times are available, and then the stars represent which time slot they currently are in. Coaches then are able to get schedules for their teams once they do a self-schedule. We could also essentially input all of the events so that we could lead to a schedule that the coaches would have available to them. So self-scheduling, as far as a report out, is what you see here. There's also the power of looking at things as an administrator to see how things are looking as far as time slots being filled. And then from an administrative perspective, it's always nice to see how things are filling up. So for this tournament, there was only a couple of self-schedules in this test at least. And I'll show you another example here in a second, where we can give things like this to an event supervisor so they know who's coming at what time. I'm going to show you what that might look like for a recent tournament. I'm just going to click over to a Division B tournament that is, or a Division C tournament that was just recent. And from a results of all events standpoint, here's the times and students that an event supervisor could be, information that could be shared, and then these are printable, and then each page could be given to an event supervisor. So pretty powerful information that we certainly like to use in our tournaments. Back to this state test site, because I'm going to make some changes and things. Scoring is handled this way, clicking on things like anatomy and physiology. Here we've done, there's this event as we've been playing with, there's not a lot of scores in here. Raw scores are entered, and I'll just enter a couple scores here and see how those are entered. Once these things are submitted, there's a text box that then pops up, and it lists some of the issues. So there is certainly some self correction. I'm not sure I would call it AI at this point, but at least a little bit of self-check as far as making sure that scores are entered. So this one lists that 43 teams still need a raw score, and then ties. So it's certainly spot ties, and then those would need to be corrected. So if I were to go to perhaps an event that's a little bit further along, so this would be an example of an event where things like no-shows are entered, perhaps participation points, those types of things. And once we submit these, there's still one with a raw score, and then we would have to fix that raw score. One of the interesting things related to scoring is going over to the admin would be the status. And we can get a really great feel as to the status of the tournament. And so as far as scoring goes, the greens indicate that those are completely in, 100%. These are indicating that there's one or two scores that are missing that still need to be input for these. And this typically pops up as we've been playing with this site, and that maybe teams have been added to these events and they have to still be scored. So it gives an overview of what's happening really quick from an administrative standpoint. Presentation of results. There's a couple ways to do this, and one of the awesome ways, I'm going to show you two ways. Doesn't Depends on what type of tournament is happening. Maybe it's a B and C tournament, or maybe it's even multiple tournaments within as far as groupings of teams, and I'll talk about that in a little bit of a second. But I can launch a presentation, and these are only those events that have those green bars by them that become live. And then when I click on these, I then get a second screen that then I would place on my second screen as far as a video projector at an award ceremony. And then on my laptop or another computer that you would have, then you could just click through these events and list the winning teams. If you want to go on to the next, you arrow or spacebar type click. But you can always go back and choose whatever event that you'd like to go to directly. That's a really nice, and it can be then relaunched so that the scores are always dynamic. We find that this is one of the real attributes of Avogadro, and that essentially an award ceremony could start before all the events are in. And we've heard reports of award ceremonies starting an hour or more earlier than in the past, just as it takes time to go through these events. The scoring can continue in the background, but then this stuff is all dynamic and live. I'll show you also a new feature with Avogadro, in that it may be quite possible, for example, here with this Boyceville Invitational Division C and a B, and that you may want to present both of those tournament results, essentially Division C and B, at the same time at the same award ceremony. So to present scores across all tournaments, you have this feature. And then I can then choose within those tournaments. For example, at this Boyceville tournament we recently had, there was a grouping of #1 teams, which were essentially big schools, and then a small school set for Division C, and then the Division B were all together. But I can then launch that presentation, and I see all of the events, and then I can just click and choose which one I'd like to present at any time. So I go to electric vehicle, and then that one is up. And then I could go down to the Division B and present Process Lab. So obviously that second screen would be a video projector. So a little bit on scoring, a little bit on scheduling, and a little bit on presentation. As far as tournament results go, I'll go back, and I was across tournaments. So say I just want to look at that Division B tournament. So the typical type of thing that we would expect in the Science Olympiad community, the events and then teams. We do have ability to display more data, and this would be up to the tournament director as to how, or tournament manager, how much data they'd like to supply. But for example, let's just click on one of these. If I click on Menominee Maroon, we certainly can display the raw score. And we've had, I would say, great success of that in Wisconsin, in that teams like to see the raw score. What we've done as a typical pattern across the nation, other states, is that the coach can see the raw score, but the public cannot. So me logging in as an administrator here, I can see those raw scores for those events. I can also see then scores for individual events. And I can see all of the food science results. And one of the other features I'll show you that's kind of interesting. Now this tournament just chose not to do that, so I'm going to switch to a different tournament so that you can see that. Oh, and I see that tournament didn't do it either. I'm going to click to one more. And I got to grab another little browser window. Here it is. So this is another feature that can be enabled instead of sharing raw scores and or sharing raw scores. There are these little graphical representations. So example, where this team of Boyceville varsity, they're the red dot, and they can see the perspective of where they lie in the range of scores for each of these events. And so that's a nice feature to share perhaps with coaches and or the public, just to get a feel on where things are. So that's that little piece. Okay, now what I'd like to talk about is some tournament setup, a login process. And so over here in the administration. So in the administration menu, typically we would begin with users. And users are set here from an administrator or a staff perspective. And administrators essentially can change settings, can change the tournament. Staff can just add data. So two types of say, tournament administration type pieces. That's where you'd set your overall tournament managers, I guess. An administrator then has the ability to do things like add events. So these events are listed here. If I click to add a new event, we give the event a unique ID for the tournament, obviously a name. Two choices that seem to be pretty standard in Science Olympiad would be just our standard normal event or perhaps a trial event. Score as far as low score better, and then number of tiers, and that seems to be dependent on what certain tournaments would like to do. And then perhaps the event itself, if the rules do describe a specific number of tiers. I'm just going to go forward and just put in a unique event here. And let's see. We got a new event called I just fly right. Standard event. Number of tiers, I'm just going to put 3. One of the interesting things one can do from a tournament management and scoring perspective is that one could assign a specific user to this. And so once user accounts have been made, you would just type in here, and I'm looking for someone by the name of Steve. I could find them in the user list, and then I could assign them to this event, and then they would have access to score this event and only this event. But a lot of times, maybe just leave that blank. I want to self-schedule this event. I'll have a slot of 10. I could put a slot time, or maybe I just want to call it the 10 o'clock slot. So I'm just going to call it slot 1, 10 a.m. And then a capacity, I'll allow 6 teams to schedule that. Okay, so that event, oh, and I didn't hit that. Slot name 1. I'm still new to this a little bit myself. 6, add. That one's now been added. So I could add another slot, slot 2, maybe at 11 a.m. Maybe I want to make that slot a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's how we would set up an event and some self-scheduling aspect to that event. Just hit update, and that one is done. Team groups. So team groups are things like perhaps a varsity or a JV. Those are some common types of things. So you would put some sort of key code that you would have for that, the description. And then one of the interesting things is the event presentation ranks. So sometimes it seems like varsity teams might get six medals, where maybe the JV teams only get 3 medals. So that would be the aspect of that. So as far as maybe a JV team, and the description is these are junior varsity. I'm only going to give them 3 medals, but I'm going to still award 10 team trophies type of thing. Okay. Configuration is aspects of the overall tournament itself. There's some interesting pieces here of setting the date, setting the self-scheduling time. Here there's the overall event presentation ranks if you haven't specified that more specific. We also have given an extra label for tournaments to categorize teams not only as a standard team, but maybe some other type of label. So like an exhibition team, or maybe it's a trial type team, which would be different than from a trial event. It's here where ultimately the event manager would then choose whether to publish the scores to the public or not. The status, we went through that. Present results, we did that. Teams. So these teams have been set up, and I'll just give you a feel of what that might look like from an administrative standpoint. So if we were to go add a team, and I would do that in the previous, these are the types of things that we would list, would be the school and the ID number for this school. And that certainly could include a C or a B in front of it. You would choose based on the type of team. So we had chosen an exhibition team as a possibility, meaning that it would get ranked within everyone else, but it doesn't affect the overall score. And then as far as a group, could assign this to another group. Notice how that junior varsity would be a possibility here. And then as far as coach, this is where I would assign a coach. And as of right now, this doesn't have a coach. I know that this coach is Andy Ham. So I could assign Andy Ham as this. And now Andy has access to this team. To add a team is just down at the bottom. And you can see some of the examples of how teams can be listed. Oh, I understand why that one did that one. So with our test site here, I get that. Event scoring, teams. Also with teams, as far as a little bit of data collection. So I'm going to go into this Boyceville, and the coaches can be guided then to do this, and that they can add team members. A couple ways to do this. Right now, you can add a team member, but then the email, there does need to be an email associated with this, and eventually we do see Avogadro going down the path of probably having some sort of independent student access to this. But for right now, it seems like tournaments are working with like a coach's, a student name, but then just tie it to a coach email, and that's how these would have been added. So if I find a name, I'm not sure I'm in here, but I guess I am. I could add myself as a team member. But if I don't have that, what I'm looking for, then I would need to create a user. So let's find some sort of unique user. Savannah is in there. Savannah happens to be a person I know. Let's see. Let's pick out some sort of unique name. I don't see anyone with that name, so I would have to create that user. And then it was here, as these users are created as students, we have the ability to customize this as to what a tournament would like. These seem to be pretty standard right now, related to things like grants and other data that tournaments would like to keep, but things like gender, ethnicity, and grade level. So once that user is registered, then they can be added, but I'm not going to create that fictitious user right now. Let's see. One of the things to begin with, and I want to show you one aspect from our recent work with North Carolina. So North Carolina has recently switched to using Avogadro. And One of the things that they have that, or situation is probably similar to states like New York, is they have lots of teams, lots of users, and what they did is they sent us essentially a spreadsheet of their teams and a spreadsheet of their users. And I'm just scrolling through a couple things here. But I wanted to show you the example of this. So what we can do is we work with users is that we certainly can help you upload in bulk some data. So this is just an example of, I think it's approaching 400 or 500 teams in North Carolina. So we preloaded all these teams so that when they go to create a new team, those schools are already listed there. We also can do something very similar with users. And so just as an example, we imported for them 600 and some users that they're already aware of in their state. So these persons are essentially created an account or have an account created for them. So when they go to Avogadro, initially what they'll need to do is just submit or create a password. So a tournament organizer can then create those teams. They can add those users to that team right here. And then as we see here, these accounts in each one of those coaches will then see which tournament they're available at. Just to give you a feel of what that would just look like initially. So an instruction would have to be sent out. I want to switch to a little bit different browser. I have automatic login set, but why don't I just do that? I'll just log out here. So going to the Avogadro homepage, and if go to the login, they would just request a forgotten your password. They would put in their email, and then they would be sent an email where they can then set their password, and then they are good to then log into Avogadro. And then once they log into Avogadro, then they will see their tournament assignments that are preloaded for them. So that's probably the easiest way to go in bulk. Otherwise, tournament managers certainly can request that coaches would go out to Avogadro. They could certainly create an account. They could register for an account here. And then once they create that account, they could contact the manager, say, I've got an account. Here's my username, so that they can then assign them to a tournament. So 2 ways to go with that. That is Avogadro. There's a variety of reports that can be gotten, and these are things that we tend to work with individual tournaments on, as far as oops. Reports as far as things like teams, information that we can then eventually, if you would like, we can create links to these types of things so that you can get data out as far as all of the students. And examples of these types of things where all of these students are going to be tied to these events. We can then print out a CSV file for you, or even generate a report as far as what are the gender of students in each of these events, what are the grade levels, what are the ethnicities. And so those are really, really powerful piece of data for grants and things like that. Now, that is is about what I have to present as a whole. I am looking online, and I do see a few users out there, but I still haven't heard from Ken, but maybe he's out there. I'm just checking to see if there's any questions, and I don't see that. So I'm going to end at this point. I think our recent experience with North Carolina will be valuable for us moving with New York, in that, like I indicated, this aspect of uploading users, uploading team names, and then the next thing that we can do would be something like this. And I guess I should go back to my share screen. I'm sorry, I should have showed you while I had it. But if we go to, why don't I just go back to Avogadro under hosted tournaments. But this will just give you a little bit of a feel. So North Carolina, working with Kim in North Carolina, she would have created this tournament as far as events. And then what we did, so she would have created this tournament with events for their elementary tournament. And then we would just use this as a template to then set up all of the other events that are happening in North Carolina. And then once she's going to set up a B tournament, and she's going to set up this C tournament, looks like she's got that, then we'll copy and use those as a template to set up. Really what she has is on that order of 20 to 30 of those types of tournaments. So she doesn't have to manually enter all that. So that was probably the other piece of information I just wanted to share quickly. So I will end with that. I hope it's been useful. I will look for some conversation and communication from Ken. I'm certainly available to answer any questions, and if we need to, we can get back together and do this again. But we're excited to be working with New York. We're excited to get some tournaments set up in your hands so that you can play with these. I did give access to Ken for that state tournament, the Wisconsin State Test Tournament. And if someone else would like access to something like that test tournament, I certainly could do that also. But like I said, as soon as we just confirm with Ken, and we'll get some New York tournaments set up, and you can begin to explore and learn and take advantage of Avogadro. With that, I'll sign off. Have a good day.